Let's look at the File menu option. This provides the functions associated with managing the virtualization and importing and exporting appliances. The first item is Preferences. Selecting Preferences brings up a pane for setting the virtualization configuration. The first general drop-down box allows us to specify the folder where we'll store our virtual machines, which we can leave as default. The second is the VirtualBox Remote Display Protocol authentication, which is used when accessing virtual machines remotely. This protocol is similar to RDP. We won't be using remote access, so the default's fine. The next Preferences function is Input. This is used to set the various Virtualization Manager and Virtual Machine host keys. Note on the Virtual Machine tab, the first entry is the right control key, which is called the host key. Further down we can see the Insert Ctrl-Alt-Del command, which we can see here is activated on the virtual machine by using host plus del. So right Ctrl and del pressed together when in a virtual machine will cause the virtual machine to behave as if Ctrl-Alt-Del had been pressed. Another useful virtual machine command is take snapshot, which we can see is host plus T. We won't go through these in detail, but you might want to pause the course for a moment and familiarize yourself with the various key combinations. When the Auto Capture Keyboard checkbox at the bottom of this panel is checked, then the keyboard input will go to the virtual machine if the cursor is in the virtual machine window. This is really useful, so we'll leave it set. The next function is Update, which configures VirtualBox to check for updates and allows the frequency and type of update to be set. We'll leave this unset for the moment. The language defaults to English, and this is fine. The display setting allows the screen size of a guest operating system to be specified. We'll leave this as automatic. The checkbox for raising machine windows can be left unchecked. We don't need to configure a proxy server, so we'll leave this as auto detect. We can change our interface scheme to be light, dark, or, as it's currently set, to follow our system settings. We'll leave this as it is. Okay, that's Preferences setup. Let's go back to the File menu. The next two options are to import and export an appliance. In VirtualBox terms, an appliance is a full copy of a virtual machine that's ready to go. The OVF standard is supported by many virtualization products, and there are lots of pre-configured virtual machines available for download from the VirtualBox website and other locations on the internet. OVF appliances come in two formats. The first is as multiple virtual machine disk files which have a VMDK extension and an associated XML file with an OVF extension which connects them together. The second format is a single packed Open Virtual Appliance file, which is a single file with an OVA extension. These are what we'll use as we set up our virtual testing lab. The next option in the File menu is the Tools submenu, which we'll cover shortly. We also have an option to manually check for updates to the VirtualBox system and an option to clear all warnings. Selecting the File Tools submenu gives us the same options as selecting the Tools item shown at the top of the left-hand pane. When we open the Options menu, we have a Welcome page, which is where we're at, and 5 tools we can use. The first tool is the Extensions Pack Manager, which shows we have an extension pack loaded and active. This provides our virtual machines with useful capabilities such as cut and paste. The next tool is the Virtual Media Manager, and this provides a summary of the virtual hard disks, DVD drives and floppy disks associated with each image. We'll skip these for the moment as we don't have any VMs installed yet. The Host Network Manager is the next tool, and this allows us to set our networking configuration. We can operate our virtual machines using one of three types of network. The host-only network allows VMs to connect to other VMs, but not to connect to any systems outside of the host-only network. Here we have a host-only network set up with VirtualBox having the network address 169.254.240.169 and with a network submask of 255.255.0.0, which means our VMs can be assigned addresses in the Class B subnet starting 169.254. If we run ipconfig, we can see that we have indeed been provisioned with the address 169.254.19.129. We won't be using host-only networking, so we'll leave this configuration as is. Note that the DHCP server is disabled, so our VMs won't be automatically provisioned with host-only addresses. The next option for networking is the one we'll be using, which is NAT networks. We can see that the DHCP server is enabled and that it will provision an IPv4 address using the smaller subnet with address prefix 10.0.2, allowing for 256 VMs. We won't get an IPv6 address provisioned automatically, but if we wanted one, we could check the box at the bottom left. We don't, so we won't. The NAT network mode offers more flexibilities, as VMs can access not only other VMs in the NAT network, but also any systems on the host network or, through the host network, the Internet. However, other systems on the host network can't initiate connections to VMs on our NAT network. We could change the name of this network, and in fact we may want to do so if we're setting up multiple NAT networks. But for our lab we're not, so we'll keep the default name. Note that we have network create and remove options at the top of the screen, and that these are also duplicated in the left-hand network menu item. We can press create and we get a new network created with the name NAT Network 1. If we were to use this, we might want to give it a different subnet range. However, we don't want a second network, so let's just remove it. The Properties control just removes or reinstates the network properties. We won't be using cloud systems, so we'll skip the Cloud Networks tab. The Activities option provides a dashboard showing the CPU, RAM and file system load that VirtualBox is placing on our system. We'll want to monitor this as we start using VMs to ensure we're not overloading the system. The Machine menu item is used to manage virtual machines, which we'll leave for the moment, as we'll come back to it when we start loading our systems. We'll see more options in VirtualBox once we load our virtual machines, but that's pretty much all we need to understand about VirtualBox as we start setting up our lab.